Hi, everyone. It's Liz Costanzo, ISS for 612 Social Studies at headquarters located in Alexandria, Virginia. I'm really excited about our mini lesson on context or historical contextualization. This mini lesson applies to grades 6 through 12. The corresponding lesson that goes with it on the Great Depression, that one is designed for 8th grade. However, we are teaching content through skills. So the actual strategies and the lesson design can be used in anything that you're teaching. You're going to see how you can apply that to your class. So we're going to get started with our mini lesson. And just as a reminder, I'll teach this like you're my students, and then I'll break it up and talk to you as teachers. All right, thanks. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to learn about or review contextualization. Contextualization is a practice used by students of history to better understand the past. Our question for today is, what is contextualization and why does it matter? So let's take a moment and write that in your notebooks. Once again, our question for today is, what is contextualization and why does it matter? And our learning objective is for you to understand and be able to apply historical context when you're learning about the past. Great. Okay, so let's get started by taking a look at the word context. So have you ever had a teacher say, look for context clues when reading a text? Right, what exactly do they mean? Right, exactly. They're like telling you, use the words around it, look at the pictures and try to figure out the meaning based on the things that are happening around us. Historical context is similar. This is a set of facts or circumstances that surround a situation or event. That is the context for history. So it's similar, but it's kind of looking at that big, broader picture, not just to the text. So in order to gain a better understanding of context and to make sure that you have this stuck in your mind forever, we're going to go ahead and put this in our notebooks. So if you could please draw a box like we've done before when we're learning vocabulary. And right now, all I want you to do is fill in the word and the definition. So make the 4 boxes, but just put in the word, which is context, and then the definition, the set of facts or circumstances that surround a situation or event. Okay, teacher to teacher. What I'm doing here is we're actually going to be establishing more context around context as we move into the lesson or the mini lesson. So for the students, I don't want them to do their sentence or make their illustration yet. I want them to get more knowledge. So that's why we're not going to complete it here. We're going to bring it back at the end, and it's actually going to be our exit slip from the mini lesson. All right, great. So now that you've gotten the word written down and the definition, keep that in mind as we move forward, learning more about historical context. So as you were writing, I passed out a handout. Don't write on it yet. We're going to be actually using it for our next learning experience, but I wanted you to have the definitions of each of the lenses of historical context without having to write them in your notebook. We're going to go ahead when we're done with this activity and we'll glue that in, okay? So to do a good job of setting the stage, and I like to think of historical context as like setting that stage for an event in history. So to do a good job of this, establishing historic context, a student of history considers political, social, cultural, historical, economic, geographic, and political pieces as they're looking at this time in history to get this broader view of what's occurring. Without understanding historical context, a person might be tempted to interpret past events based on current conditions. So we don't want to do that. When we're studying the past, we really want to get a feel. So we're not making a judgment based on, we do not do that today. We don't want to make those judgments. We really want to understand what it was like to be in that time period the best that we can. So by examining historical context, historians can gain a deeper understanding of that time period. So to help do that today, we are going to, we'll study the history of you. And that's the sheet that you have in front of you. So if a student from history, so we're setting the stage for this activity. If a student of history was studying your life 50 years from now, what is the historical context? So for each of the categories, put an example from the time you live in and your personal life on the chart. So let's take about 5 minutes to establish your historical context around you. So if someone was looking at your life 50 years from now, they'd have a better understanding what it was like, what life was like to live in today in 2023. Okay, any questions? Okay, great. Go ahead and get started. I'll walk around the room and see how it's going. Okay, so you're going to give the students about 5 minutes. Now, this mini lesson isn't 15 minutes long. It's significantly shorter than that. So what I probably would do here is after 5 minutes are up and I'm walking around the room, I might go ahead and do the check to see how much time they need left, the one where you go, show of fingers, please, 2 minutes, 1 minute, good to go. I like that particular strategy because the kids are working and they don't feel bad that they want longer time. Typically, I say, keep your heads down, just hold up your fingers, 2, 1, good to go. And that's based on the time that I know we have available. So let's say we've done it. The kids are ready to go. Great. Let's move on. Okay, so great. Looks like everybody's finished up with their historical context. So we are going to parent share. So we've done this many times before. I'm going to ask that you find a partner. And once you find your partner, you're going to do the following. You're going to compare your historical contexts. You're looking for what is similar and what is different. And if they are different, why might they be different? Anybody questions? All right, so let's find a partner. When you have your partner, raise your hand. I also like to use the partner clocks, teacher to teacher, sorry. I still use the partner clock where they set up appointments. I like that better because then no one's ever left out. But I think we talked about that in PD a couple of years ago. So the appointment clock is great for finding a partner. All right, so the kids have found a partner and they're discussing. And then we're just going to do kind of a general conversation. I'm going to still have them on their feet. I'm not going to have them return to their seats. Let's talk. What did you find that was similar? What did you find that was different? And then why might they be different? And hopefully we're going to get some responses from the students that will have the idea that it's the same time, but they've been doing different things in their lives. And this leads us into our another practice of historical perspectives. And this is going to be really important when we get into the next activity. So sorry, I'm talking to teacher to teacher. All right, so I'm going to go back talking to students. Right. So we might have a historical, our perspective might be different because of where we were in the time period, possibly your family's religious beliefs or something else that makes your life similar or different. And that lens is applied when we're looking at the past. So if a student from history is looking at your particular perspective and they're looking at my perspective from this time period, they might see something different. And that's okay. But we want to, and that is really okay because we want historians to know that people looked at things differently. So with that in mind, let's go back to our definition. And at this time, let's take about 3 minutes for you to write your sentence and then make your illustration of context, the set of facts or circumstances that surround a situation or event. Everybody good? So now, teacher to teacher, as the students are filling in their boxes, I'll be walking around the room to see if they've got it. If I notice a lot of them don't understand or can't write a sentence or make a drawing that illustrates it, I'm going to go back and reteach it. But I'm hoping if just a few don't really have it perfect, we can move on and then we can go back and revisit it after we get done with the lesson that's bringing in the content to go with historical context. Okay, so this finishes the mini lesson with this vocab used as a formative assessment piece, and we're ready to move on to the next phase. So remember, this context piece works really with any grade level. The first part, the mini lesson. The second is designed for 8th grade. The topic is the Great Depression. However, the strategies in here can be applied across content areas and grade levels. All right, now that we've established the historical thinking skill of contextualization, we're going to use that skill to set the stage to get a better understanding of the period in the United States history from 1929 to 1939, known as the Great Depression. So let's take a moment to read the 4 definitions of Great Depression. As you're reading, I'd like you to think about what words stand out to you from the definitions. Are there any words that you do not know? And what is meant by the word great? So let's take about 3 minutes to read through these. So you can choose to have a printed copy of this because you might want the kids to use a highlighter. You could also choose to read each of the statements for the students and have them think about it in that way as well. Either way will work. We're just kind of getting them to think about this time period in history, like what is meant by the Great Depression to move that work forward. All right, now that we've had the opportunity to kind of discuss what these words mean to you, some things that really popped, some other ideas that you were able to get from the definitions, let's take a minute and go to your notebooks and write in the word Great Depression. And then based on all of these definitions, write down your own. Okay, any questions? Right, you're going to take that and synthesize it, make it your own definition. Okay, great. Let's take about 2 minutes for that. All right, so now at this time, the reason why this is just another vocabulary strategy to use, but this is for a big concept like the Great Depression. So this is also making sure that all of the kids are on the same page with you, so you know what they know about that time period in history. So you can go around the room, check and see what they're writing, and then when they're done, about 2 minutes is all it should take. You should be ready to move on. So now that you have your definition of the Great Depression, we're going to set the stage or establish the historic context for this time period. The question we are going to consider is what was life like during the Great Depression? Eventually, we're going to add different perspectives. For example, what was life like for women during the Great Depression? For now, however, we are going to start the exploration of the historic context of the Great Depression with a question storm. What is a question storm, you might ask? So, what a question storm is you're going to generate a bunch of questions about one of those lenses that go around the study of establishing historical context. So first, you're going to work with a partner or a group, a small group, and you're going to be assigned one of these contexts to view the historical event. And remember, the historical event is the Great Depression in the United States from 1929 to 1939. In your group, you're going to generate at least 10 questions you could ask in your category to help establish the historical context for the Great Depression. For example, if you're assigned the economic lens, one question might be, what jobs were available during the Great Depression? That would be a great question for research, which goes back to good question starters remain the same. Who, what, when, where, why, and how are usually really great question starters to get people to think. So we're going to use those as we do our question storms. Any questions about the question storm? So here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to have you join your teams, and one team member is going to get the chart paper and the markers for the entire group. Once you get your chart paper and markers, you are going to add your description and the title to the top of your page. So for example, if you're social, you're going to have social, and you're going to have the definition for that, the way people lived and why they and what they believed. Okay, great. Then you're going to generate at least 10 questions that could be used to research life in the Great Depression. You have those great sentence starters: who, what, when, where, why, and how. And you're going to have 10 minutes to generate at least 10 questions. Okay, does anybody have any questions about what we're going to be doing? All right, so we've got our teams. Let's have that team member that you select to go get the materials for today and go ahead and get started. You have 10 minutes to generate 10 questions. Okay, so at this time, we're walking around the room as the kids are working on their projects. We might be asking them some questions about their questions or to get them to get some questions going and get that process started. So it's going to take about 10 minutes for the students to generate their questions. Okay, now that time is up, the students are going to be participating in a silent gallery walk. During this walk, they're going to select the 3 questions from each category that they think would be the best question to research for that. So here's the process. As a team, you will post your poster, bring a marker with you when I tell you to move. You're going to post your poster, and we're going to post them around the room. At each poster, you'll have 2 minutes to read all of the questions and pick the 3 you think are the best for learning the historical context of the Great Depression. The hard part is you're going to do this silently, so you won't be influenced by the selection of your team members. So this is all about you. You're going to pick the 3 that you think are the best 3 for research. Okay, but everyone has a marker, everyone gets to vote. So probably the trickiest part is to move to the next poster. So what I'm going to have everybody do now, you got your markers, you're standing in front of your poster, you're going to move to the next poster and be ready to go. Okay, so you'll have 2 minutes to eat poster. Remember, it's silent gallery walk. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, shift. Everyone is going to shift to the left. All right, so teacher to teacher. The silent gallery walk is great for this particular lesson. You have to make sure you're not talking either. That's you guys don't know me, but that's probably the hardest part for me is me being silent. I just set my watch and tell it to go off every 2 minutes, and then they move to the next poster. I'm rotating around the room. The first shift is usually the hardest shift, but once they get going, it is great. And as I noticed when I was doing this presentation for you, that the slide is not showing up with the font. The actual PowerPoint that's included in your course has a black background, and it does show up. I'm not sure why it's not showing up on here, but it has all of the instructions because to tell those verbally would be a really bad idea. Okay, so anyway, it's got them on there, so you'll be able to use them if you want to use this lesson. You can just copy and paste those. Even if you're just doing a gallery walk that's not about the Great Depression, those instructions will work because they're generic. Okay, so now the kids have finished their gallery walk. What happens next? All right, everyone, thank you so much. Go ahead and take your seats. It looks like we voted on all of them for our top questions. So what's going to happen next? We'll be using the top 5 questions from each category to explore the Great Depression. You'll get a perspective for your inquiry. So what was life like for women, white men, minorities, children, etc., during the Great Depression? You'll have a team of 2 or 3 to conduct the research on this particular group. So we have the questions to ask for each of these people around the different lenses, and then you're going to take the perspective of a certain person. So I might be researching with a team about women based on economic, geographic, all of the things, and then someone else might be doing African American. And someone else might be doing white men, someone else might be doing kids. And we're going to be using the same questions though to do the research, but it's going to look different because we're looking at it from a different perspective. Then we'll bring that all on home with circle of voices. So any questions? We'll talk about that tomorrow. But for right now, your do now is to kind of summarize what we've done today. We had the mini lesson where we learned about context, and we took that and applied it to the Great Depression, which is the content you're going to be learning about. So if you could, for your exit slip, please write down the historic context is, and it matters because. So once again, historic context is, and it matters because. Great. Okay, so we've had the students work through the context as a mini lesson and then applying it to the Great Depression using a question storm, which also tied in with this morning when we were looking at Costa's level of questioning and using questions in the classroom. I love this as well because it also applies to, are the students asking any good questions, which is part of the learning walkthrough tool that your administrators look at when they come into your classroom. So question storms are really great and get that inquiry process going for students. Also, contextualization is challenging, setting that historical stage. And the sooner we can get kids to think about all the things that happened during the historical time period, the better they're going to understand that as they move through school, but also it helps them become a better citizen because they're looking at the big picture, not just at that one little moment in time. So that's it for our lesson on context. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks.